Let's say you've saved well. You've got somewhere between $1 and $2 million in your traditional retirement accounts, your 401k, your IRA. You worked for 30 years to get there, and on paper, that number looks like safety. But here's what most people don't realize until it's too late to change it. That money isn't just sitting quietly. The government has already scheduled when it comes out and how much of it they get back. And if you don't plan for that before it starts, the tax bill you end up with won't be because you did something wrong. It'll be because no one explained this to you early enough. That's what today is about. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what happens to a retirement account above that $1 to $2 million range and what the people who come through it well do differently. Here's something I want you to really sit with. The IRS does not tax your net worth. It taxes your income. That sounds simple, but it changes everything about how you should be thinking about retirement once you've crossed that $1 to $2 million mark in pre-tax savings. A lot of people in that range feel comfortable because the number on their statement looks good, but your statement is a snapshot. What the IRS actually sees is a cash flow, and above a certain balance, that cash flow is already scheduled, whether you're ready for it or not. That's the shift from net worth as a scorecard to income as the real game. So what does already scheduled actually mean? It means required minimum distributions, RMDs. These are withdrawals the IRS requires you to take from traditional retirement accounts every year starting at a certain age. You don't get to leave the money sitting there. It has to come out, and when it does, it counts as ordinary income. According to IRS life expectancy tables, if you have $1.5 million in a traditional IRA or 401k and you were born before 1960, your first RMD begins at age 73. That first distribution is roughly $56,000. $56,000, that's about $4,600 a month added to your income whether you need the money or not. If you were born in 1960 or later, your RMD age is 75, and that first distribution on the same $1.5 million is closer to $61,000 a year. And here's the part that surprises people. That percentage doesn't stay the same. It increases every year. By the time you're 80, that annual forced distribution could be $70,000 or $80,000 or more, still coming in, still taxable, regardless of what your actual spending looks like. Let me show you what this actually looks like when it hits a real tax return. Imagine this. You've got your $56,000 RMD. You're also receiving about $40,000 in Social Security. That puts you at $96,000 of income before you've touched a brokerage account, before dividends, before any part-time work, before anything unexpected. $96,000. And you haven't spent an extra cent. That's what I mean by income stacking. Each source of income doesn't replace the others, it piles on. And once you're at $96,000, you may be well inside the 22% federal bracket, possibly approaching the 24%. Not because you were reckless, not because you overspent, but because the system is pushing income onto your tax return on its own schedule. There's another layer here that often catches people off guard. Once income crosses certain thresholds, Medicare can start charging higher premiums, sometimes several $1,000s more per year. These surcharges, set by the federal government, are based on your income from 2 years earlier. So a decision you make at 71 can show up on your Medicare bill at 73. Most people never connect those two things. And Social Security can become up to 85% taxable once income, including your RMDs, crosses certain levels. That benefit you expected to be only partially taxed suddenly becomes fully taxable. This is what I call tax compression. Nothing dramatic happens in a single year, but quietly, year by year, more of your retirement income flows into taxation than you ever planned for. I want to pause here for a second and ask you something. When you were saving, really putting money away in your 401k every year, did anyone sit you down and explain what would happen to that money once you stopped working? Most people I talk to say no. And that's not their fault. The accumulation phase has a lot of cheerleaders. The distribution phase has far fewer guides. So, where do you think you fall right now? Are you already thinking about this, or is this the first time you're hearing it laid out this way? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. Here's the good news. There's a window, and for most people, it's in their early 60s, where you have more control over your income than you'll have at any other point in retirement. And if you use that window well, it can quietly change the outcome for the next 20 or 30 years. In that window, you're often no longer earning a full salary. RMDs haven't started. Social Security may not have started. Your income is lower, and more importantly, it's flexible. You're in control of it. That's where Roth conversions can make a real difference. A Roth conversion means you take money from your traditional IRA, pay taxes on it now, and move it to a Roth account where it grows tax-free and is never subject to RMDs. Converting at a 22% rate in your early 60s is a very different thing than being pushed into a 24% or 32% bracket in your 70s because RMDs have already stacked. Plain and simple, you pay a smaller tax bill now, on your terms, instead of a larger one later, on the government's terms. I want to be honest about something here. This is the part where a lot of people think they're already doing the right thing, and that instinct leads them in the wrong direction. This might surprise you. The most common mistake I see isn't spending too much. It's being too careful with the wrong account. A lot of retirees, and I genuinely understand why, decide to protect their traditional IRA. They spend from brokerage accounts first. They spend from their Roth. They let that IRA grow untouched because it feels like the responsible choice. And for a while, it works. Taxes stay low, the balance keeps growing. But here's what's happening underneath the surface. A larger IRA simply means larger RMDs. Larger RMDs mean more income stacking. More income stacking means higher Medicare costs, more Social Security taxation, and a bigger tax bill every year for as long as you live. According to data from Fidelity on retirement withdrawal behavior, many retirees who prioritize spending non-IRA assets first find themselves with significantly larger forced distributions in their late 70s and 80s than they anticipated. In the same way that your investments compound, your tax exposure compounds right along with them. And by the time that becomes visible, by the time the RMDs are large enough to feel like a problem, the conversion window is mostly closed. The people who come through this well aren't the ones with the biggest balances. They're the ones who managed the timing. Let me give you a simple way to think about all of this. Imagine two neighbors. Same street, same age, both retired at 65 with $1.5 million in traditional IRAs. Margaret took conversions seriously in her early 60s, not all at once, but steadily, staying within her bracket, paying a manageable tax bill each year. Her neighbor David left his IRA untouched, figuring he'd deal with distributions when they came. By age 78, David's RMDs are $85,000 a year. He's in a higher bracket. His Medicare premiums are elevated. His Social Security is almost fully taxable. Margaret's RMDs are less than half that size. She's still in the 12% bracket. Her Medicare costs are standard. Same starting balance, very different outcomes. The difference wasn't investment returns. Now I want to talk about something that rarely gets discussed in retirement planning conversations. Not because it isn't important, but because it's hard to bring up. What happens to the surviving spouse? When one spouse passes away, The surviving spouse usually continues receiving much of the same income. RMDs don't disappear, and only the smaller of the two Social Security checks goes away. But the tax structure changes dramatically. That survivor shifts from married filing jointly to single filer status. And when that happens, your tax brackets, both for income and for Medicare, are cut roughly in half. Your standard deduction is cut roughly in half. So that same $60,000 RMD and $35,000 in Social Security that fit comfortably inside one bracket as a married couple, it can land in a very different place, a significantly higher effective rate for a single filer. The income may barely change. The tax bill can jump considerably. And most couples never model this scenario ahead of time because it's not an easy conversation. And honestly, it doesn't feel urgent when you're both healthy. But planning for it when you have time and options is very different from discovering it after the fact. Here's a simple way to think about it. Retirement starts as a shared plan, but it often finishes as an individual one. The tax code treats those two situations very differently. So let's bring this all the way together. If you're above that $1 to $2 million range in traditional retirement accounts, the number that matters most isn't the balance anymore. It's how efficiently you manage the income that comes out of those accounts and how long you personally stay in control of when it comes out. Strategic sequencing beats blind accumulation. Adding another $100,000 to your net worth may matter far less than avoiding a $50,000 unnecessary tax bill, especially one that repeats every year for the next 2 decades. Two people with identical $1.5 million balances can have retirement outcomes that are hundreds of thousands of dollars apart, not because of market returns, because of when and how income is recognized. If you don't manage the conversion path intentionally, the IRS will manage it for you. That's just what required minimum distributions are, the government's way of collecting on a bill that's been growing since your first 401k contribution. I'm curious, has any of this changed how you're thinking about your own situation? Have you already started Roth conversions, or is this the first time you've thought about timing it this way? Let me know below. There's no right or wrong answer. I just like knowing where people are in the process. Here's the sentence I want you to remember from today. The retirees who keep the most of what they saved aren't the ones who saved the most. They're the ones who controlled when it became income. We started today by talking about that $1 to $2 million threshold and what it means when you cross it. I said the money wasn't just sitting quietly anymore. I said the government had already scheduled when it comes out. Now you can see exactly what that means. Above that threshold, net worth is no longer your most important number. Your most important number is how much of your income you control, its timing, its source, and its tax treatment, before the government's schedule takes over. The people who come through retirement with their money intact aren't the ones who saved the most. They're the ones who understood that the accumulation phase and the distribution phase require completely different strategies, and they started the distribution strategy early enough to actually use it. The IRS taxes income, not net worth. Every dollar you convert, sequence, or time well is a dollar that stays in your household instead of going back. I think about someone like Margaret, the neighbor I described earlier. She's 78. She's not wealthy by any grand measure, but her monthly expenses are covered, her tax bill is predictable, and she's not spending her retirement years anxious about what April will bring. That's what good sequencing actually buys you, not just numbers on a page, a retirement that feels the way you always hoped it would. If this felt useful, if it gave you something to think about or something to bring to your next conversation with an advisor, I'd love for you to save this video. Share it with someone who might be in this situation. And if you haven't subscribed yet, this is the kind of thing we talk about regularly. No jargon, no urgency, just real retirement planning, explained clearly.